Joining us now for reaction to the Biden administration's position on the world stage is Newsmax contributor and former 2016 Trump foreign policy advisor, George Papadopoulos. Thank you so much for joining us. Great to have you with us.
Thanks for having me, Heather.
So this was really bizarre, the way all of this went down. Do you think, in fact, the Biden administration was surprised by what China came to U.S. soil and did and challenged us, challenged our authority to speak on the position of strength, amongst a lot of other things?
Well, look, in politics, optics is reality. So let's recap the optics of this disastrous week, because it wasn't just the Chinese that publicly mocked the Biden administration. Kim, Putin, and Xi all humiliated the U.S. president. Putin invited Joe Biden to a debate to test his mental acumen. You had Kim refusing phone calls, saying that he's only going to talk to President Trump. And Xi's delegation on U.S. soil mocked and humiliated Joe Biden's delegation. This should have been a moment that set the tone for the future of U.S.-China relations, one in which Secretary of State Blinken should have negotiated from a position of strength and worked on the successes of the Trump administration's policies targeting China's predatory economic policies, its malign influence throughout the world, and its gross human rights violations. None of that happened. What did happen, however, is that the Chinese responded in full effect, telling the U.S. president's delegation that the United States is maligned with weakness, it's not a U.S. leader, and that issues like Black Lives Matter have to be solved before the U.S. can dictate terms to the rest of the world.
So what do you think the Biden administration should do in response?
The Biden administration should have met with U.S. allies. Apparently, Secretary of State Blinken met with the Japanese and the South Koreans. I'm not sure exactly what came out of those meetings, because Secretary of State Blinken was more focused on tweeting South Korean food and his and the yummy taste of that, instead of discussing how those two U.S. allies can be used as a counterbalance towards China's malign influence in the South China Sea, the East Pacific, and its encroaching influence throughout the entire world with its Silk Road manifestation that it's trying to impose. The United States today has to coalesce its allies, India, South Korea, Japan, and in Europe, and set terms with these countries and make it known that you have to choose between the United States and China. Today, China's influence is growing in every theater that I just described. It's an issue that will target U.S. influence throughout the world and result in disastrous economic situations for the U.S. worker at home.
Yeah, I mean, it's not just, you mentioned the situation with Putin demanding a one-on-one debate with President Biden, and then there was also, as you mentioned, North Korea not taking his calls. Also Mexico, the president of Mexico, who called him the migrant president and blamed him from the crisis at the border. And then you had Iran claiming that the Biden administration has freed up and given them $3 billion. Other countries are watching. How will they respond to what is transpiring with the way these leaders are treating President Biden and his administration?
When President Biden said that America is back, it looks like he meant was America's back to the failed foreign policy of the Obama administration, which of course Joe Biden was then vice president of leading from behind. During this leading from behind, that is when China began its ascension as a global power. You saw the crisis in Libya, in Syria, Iran's rise as a global power trying to obtain a nuclear weapon. Joe Biden is following the failed foreign policy of the Biden administration. Our allies and our foes around the world are watching very closely, and they are waiting to see how far or how long Joe Biden can even last in his current state.
When you say that, how long Joe Biden can last in his current state, what do you mean? Are you saying his mental acuity? Is that what you're saying?
I think even Democrats today are checking closely to see how long Joe Biden could actually stay in office. His mental acumen and his capabilities are deteriorating in front of our eyes. It's a very sad situation to see.
Yeah.
No one would wish that upon anyone, let alone the United States president. But at this moment, the Democrats themselves have, during Congress, notified Joe Biden that they are not comfortable with him holding a monopoly on nuclear codes in this country. The next step is going to be looking into a possible 25th Amendment because our national security is at risk, and we have to put our people in front of politics. And Joe Biden just does not seem to be up to par right now.
George, what do you think about Russia? What should be done with that? We saw he and Putin kind of went at it, butted heads a little bit, exchanged some less than frivolous comments toward each other. Is this dangerous? How would you respond? Would it be with sanctions? They withdrew their ambassador. Would it be withdrawing an ambassador? What would you do?
You have to hit Putin where it hurts, and that's his finances, and that's the state coffers. And what China and what Russia relies on overwhelmingly for their state coffers and their finances is the export of energy. Putin was licking his chops when Joe Biden destroyed the Keystone Pipeline's licenses, and he prevented the offshore drilling of natural gas and oil in federal land. The United States had its energy unleashed. There was an energy renaissance in this country under President Trump, in which the United States became a net exporter of both oil and natural gas for the first time in its history. Joe Biden, within his first 100 days, has sought, with executive orders, to recant and relinquish that negotiating strength that the United States had and ossify Russia's hold not only in Europe, but also in Syria. This is the unfortunate situation of what happens when a president is being forced to govern by the extreme left, even though he doesn't owe his election to the extreme left. What Joe Biden should be working on, if he does want to target Putin where it hurts, instead of these softball interviews with George Stephanopoulos on ABC, where he says he's going to pay a big price for being a killer, is allow the United States to continue being a net exporter of energy to Europe and around the world, hit the Russians where it hurts, and that's in their state coffers. Less rhetoric, more action.
All right. George Papadopoulos, great to have you with us. Thank you for the insight.
Hey, I'm Rob Finnerty. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this video, please join the conversation in the comments below. Don't forget to subscribe, too. Hit the bell icon to be alerted to breaking news. And remember, there's a whole lot more on Newsmax TV, America's fastest growing cable news network. Newsmax TV, we're real news for real people.